Welcome, low ego action heroes. I'm Debbie Levitt from Delta CX. We are a full service CX and UX consultancy. And this is my Axure 10 Core Skills course. I've been using Axure since February 2011, and I've been teaching it for many, many years. And in fact, I've been one of Axure's recommended trainers since 2014. This course is designed to take you from super Axure newbie or Axure afraid all the way through to confident intermediate. So if you've landed on this one video, there are many, many others. Please check our Axure lessons playlist for a lot more videos about using Axure. The Delta CX YouTube channel has over 500 videos on it as of when I'm recording this in December 2021, and I hope you'll subscribe and join in some of our live streams. I'm live usually 3 or 4 times a week with teaching UX research and design, talking about CX, helping people get into the profession, helping leaders and managers, and of course, don't forget Tuesday, office hours, Ask Me Anything. So subscribe and hang out here. So thanks for being here. Please subscribe and let's jump into that next Axure lesson.
Let's take a look at how we would take our medium fidelity form elements and make them more visually designed or higher fidelity. So let's start with Axure's text field, and I'm just going to drag one out here to a random spot, doesn't matter where. And we've already learned that Axure has the text field widget style with the disabled style and the hint style. So we can put some hint text in here. I'll write last name this time just to mix it up a little bit. So we've got a field. Now, most of our fields don't really look like this anymore. We're doing different things with visual styling when we are working in high or full fidelity. So let's use our buddies, the global widget styling, to make our visual styles. So let's think about, so instead of overwriting text field, I'm going to let the medium fidelity one stay the way it is, and I'm going to create a new style. So let's say I'm going to call this one form field, or again, give it whatever name makes sense to you that helps you remember it. Let's say our font size, let's say I still love my big fonts, and let's say I still want black or mostly black text. Now let's think about the lines and the shaping for the box. Maybe the box by default is, let's see, maybe use a nice dark blue. And maybe it's got 2 pixels thickness around, and it's all 4 lines, which we'll talk about in a moment. And let's say it's got really rounded corners. I'll say 12. And then do we need an outer shadow? No, that's too silly. How do we want the text aligned inside the box? Left aligned, vertically middle, and some left padding, because we don't want what people type in the box to be right up against the side of the box. Let's try 15 and see how that looks. We don't need character spacing. We don't need some of these other things. So I'm going to say okay. Now remember, we created a style, but we didn't apply it. So now I have to use my drop list to say, hey, I want this to be form field. And maybe I don't want it to be 25 high. Maybe I want this to be a lot taller. I'm seeing, a lot larger fields nowadays. So maybe it looks like this. That's looking a little bit more like a modern form. And maybe we've got this, this is very different from our medium fidelity one. I'm going to copy paste this for a moment and just make a variation on this so people can see a couple of other form ideas based on what I tend to see out there. So I'm going to duplicate this and just make something called form field 2 and just show you that I'm also seeing where some people are doing forms as a line. So if they're just a line, we don't need corner radius. We might want the line a little bit thicker so it's easier to see. And I can just say, okay, now I've created a style, but I haven't applied the style. So I can say this one gets form field 2. Let's go back and grab that. There we go. So you can see that there are different styles here, and you can use the global widget styling to control for your entire file how these text fields look. Again, the typography, the curve of the lines, things like that. So you can decide how you want your stuff to look. But there's a few more things that we probably want to build before we move on to some of the other widgets. For example, it's really important for our form fields to have a focused state. The focused state is when the user is in that field actively, there's usually a different visual look for it. Now, not everybody does this, but they should, because not only does it help people focus their attention on the field, but it's great for accessibility. If people are tabbing their way through our page because they don't use a mouse, how are they going to know when they're on the right field? These things have to light up in some way so that we know that they are in that field. So we're going to create a focused state. So I'm going to go down to my form field and I'm going to duplicate it so that it's a good starting point, and I'm going to call it form field focus. Now, what do I want it to look like? Just for the sake of being silly, I'm going to make mine super hard to miss, really kind of wildly designed. So let's say I say that when we have focus, I want this to be filled with light blue. You know, you can't miss it. Okay, let's give that a try. Now we've created a style, but we haven't applied the style. Just for fun, let's take both of these and let's apply that style to focus. We choose widget style and we're going to find form field focus. Here it is. And Axure is giving us a preview of it. Now notice it's not the great choice for both of these, because the one with the line is going to end up getting the rest of the lines that make the box. So that's not great, but again, let's just play with this. Let's refresh it and see what we've got. I'll close the console for now. We're done troubleshooting. So if I click in here, that's where this is now focus. I can type in here. This is probably not the best color, but this is the type of thing you want to do so that people can see it. And if I click outside of the box where we have lost the focus, you can see Axure changes the visual style because it's no longer focused. If I click here, of course, you know, it drew all of the lines because my style says all of the lines are there. I can actually change that because I can say to Axure, let's go into the widget style manager, and I can say, hey, hold on. When people focus, I don't really want you to do anything with the lines. Don't change the lines. Don't change the corner radius. Don't change the border thickness. Don't change the line color. The only thing I want you to change is the fill color. Let's see if that works. And if it doesn't, let's talk about why not. There we go. That's working. And there we go. That's working, except we don't have rounded corners. If you wanted rounded corners, you got to deal with that. Otherwise, this is working. Now, why did that work? If we said that the style changes from X to Y, why did Axure only change part of the style? Because the way that these widget styles work when you're doing the style effect is the style effect is looking for what should I do differently from the old style. If we only tell it, hey, just change the fill color, it will keep everything from the default style and just change or add the fill color. If we had filled out the whole thing, which we had just before, then Axure, of course, said, okay, I'm going to change all of these things. And that's how our underlined field style became a rounded rectangle box. So you can use, just on the style effects, just the things you want to change. That's why if we also take a look at hint, we'll just make it italic, though I also have it changing the size. There was another one here, was where was it? I'm forgetting. But you'll see this in other areas where sometimes this is a good example. Remember our text link? Our text link was blue and underlined, but our mouse over was fuchsia and underlined. It was already underlined because the default style had the underline, and it was just the only thing we wanted changed was the font color. So we didn't have to rebuild the entire style. You can, but you don't have to, is my point. Now, there are some other states that we could hypothetically make here. We have a disabled field, we have the hint style, we have the focused style. What else is there? Selected, maybe. We'll talk more about selected when we do dynamic panels. What about an error style? What if we needed to say that there was an error happening in this field right now and try to draw people's attention to it? Now, of course, we could change it so that the line is red, and now we're trying to draw people's attention to that. So let's say we've got form field focus, and I'm going to duplicate that and call this one form field error. We'll say that the inside is fuchsia is probably a bit much even for me. We'll say the inside of it is super soft pink, which again is not a good choice, but just play along with me. I'm just trying to make this obvious. And the line color is fuchsia. But remember, it's not enough to message with color. So while the error state is a great tool and technique to have for Axure, it's not the only thing. If you are building error effects on things, in addition to the error style, you're also probably going to want an icon and a message. Because even though we've changed the color of these, we didn't tell people what went wrong. We didn't tell people that something bad has happened and how to fix it. So if we want to pass the heuristic for error messages being meaningful, we've got to make sure that in addition to these error styles, we also have an error message coming up, which we're going to play with later when we have a lesson in dynamic panels on creating some success messages and some error messages. So we'll play with that later, but for now, we can at least preview what our error state would look like by clicking error. I'll do that for both of these. And we can see already what would it look like. This is what they would look like, and then we would need to design an error message that helps people understand what went wrong and how to fix it. So that's what I would suggest. So I do like using the error state, which is not in Axure 9. It's only in Axure 10. It's a newer feature. Which is this error style. But again, it's not enough. It's not enough to just change the color of something. So that's more of a UX tip than an Axure tip. But again, we'll talk about error messages in a later lesson. Now let's talk about text area. Same thing as the text field. We can start to try to give this some sort of look. Maybe we can even reuse form field. Let's try it out. What if I said form field for our text area? How does that look? Looks like that. And we're not going to get the scroll bar until we need the scroll bar. So if I am just typing stuff in here, it's fine. We're not getting any scroll bar. But if for some reason this were a smaller text area, as I see people sometimes doing, which may or may not make sense for what you're building, but there you go. If I have a smaller text area and we are typing in here, then eventually I'm going to get that scroll bar. Note that in Axure, scroll bars are not pretty, and there is currently no easy way to visually design a scroll bar. Visually designed scroll bars I talk about in my advanced course, but in general, I think that visually designing the scroll bar is not important for the purposes of prototyping. Yes, eventually for the real thing, we want to have our visually designed scroll bars, but for rapid prototyping, focus on rapid. We are probably not testing whether or not people think the scroll bar is pretty. So to me, it's okay if it's medium fidelity. I know it bothers people who are more artistic than I am because it looks a little weird right here. It's got straight corners when our thing has rounded corners. It doesn't match our color scheme. It's yucky, but I say go with it because it may not be worth the time to build out the more realistic one. And remember that we can also have our same effects. We can say there is a focused style. Always use focus styles. Again, they are so important for accessibility. Please don't leave out focused styles, especially if you are going to be testing for accessibility. So make sure in your prototype you've got that. Now I'm adding the error style as well. So our text and our text area can use the same styles if you would like. They don't have to use different styles. They can have the same styles so that they have the same shapes and font sizes and things like that. But again, the shape will change a little bit if we make this taller, and we can also make it wider. So if you're giving people a place to type an open comment or answer to a question, you can have that type of thing. Obviously, in this case, the line style doesn't work as well. If we just had a line at the bottom and people could type lines of stuff, but they wouldn't see where it started or ended, that style visually, in my opinion, doesn't work as well. But if you can find a way to make it work, go for it. You know, this is your rodeo. Okay, let's take another look now at the, let's see, list boxes I usually don't use, but let's see if we can give them the same design as the form field, and let's see how they look. Yeah, again, kind of ugly and unrealistic, but there you go. Let's put some stuff in here. Or semi-realistic, but again, let's check it out. Yeah, you know, if you really need a list box, then congratulations. Note that we have the padding here because that was part of the style. So all of this will kind of line up. So that, just keep an eye on that. But again, nothing you can do about this scroll bar, and it's probably not worth it. Now, as for the drop list, the checkbox, and the radio button, we're going to learn how to make those visually more attractive or more on brand in separate lessons. So stick with me for the next lesson.